Hey, everybody, welcome back to It's the Little Things podcast. I'm so excited to introduce one of my new friends, Liv Lohmeier. She is on the volleyball team here, and I'm just so stoked to have her on. But Liv, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Liv Lohmeier. I'm a graduate student here at Moorhead State. So it's my fifth year. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I think that's about it. I guess I could tell you a little bit of my testimony. So I grew up in a small town church back in Cincinnati. Didn't really know Jesus like on a personal level until I got here to Moorhead and got invited to Better Life Church here. And then I kind of just flipped my world upside down and just fell in love with Christ and got to know what he did for me on the cross. And ever since I've been following him. So
I love that. That's awesome. I think it's so cool to meet new people, and I'm just excited because one of our old guests, Alexis Struther, she once said you should talk to Liv, and I was like, well, okay. So here we are, we're talking, and I just am so excited, and so I guess we might as well just get started and ask
yeah.
the big question, which is, what is somebody or something that has completely changed your life that you've used throughout your days here?
Yeah, I think one thing that has definitely changed my life here at Moorhead and especially with sports is that someone told me once that I'm not defined by my stats. And that was something that sometimes I still struggle with, but that I used to struggle with a lot. And that, like, okay, well, I have this big name on my back now and I have to perform to that every game. And that's not true ever because Jesus is enough for me. And he doesn't care about stats. And that's like one of the biggest things that I try to get through my hard head a lot. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But stats are something that like it's so easy to look at in like all sports because there's so many, and everyone's like, oh, like you didn't perform well because of the stats. Well, stats don't show everything, and
Right.
that's obviously a lot hard. A lot. It's really difficult to see that sometimes. But that's something that I've just been fighting with and still fight with. But I'm not perfect and still work in progress.
Yeah,
So
I love that a lot because I know as a softball player myself, you get kind of into the whole, what's my batting average? Is it
Mhm.
over 400? Like it's really hard to go through and be good at what you do when you're so worried about if you're good at what you do.
Mhm.
And it is one of the big things that I think it's like the biggest part of playing a sport in college is just knowing that you are not defined by your stats. Like you said, like you
Mhm.
are defined by the Lord above, and He thinks you're perfect. So why would you think anything less of yourself because of
Exactly.
some numbers on a screen that
Right.
won't matter in 20 years?
Right. Right. Yeah. And especially like I don't want to like be braggy or anything, but my sophomore year I got player of the year for our conference. And I got that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But at the same time I was like, is this it? Like I feel like there's something more in life and like just couldn't really find that. And then I just kept seeking Jesus. And I was like, okay, well, like this is it. Like this is my something more that's gonna fill that void in my heart. And so that was just really fun. But, also after that, yeah, I was like, okay, well, now I got that under my belt. Like, now people are going to have a target on my back about,
Right.
like, okay, well, she's a good player. Like, what can we expect from her now? And, like,
Yeah.
everyone's watching me. So that pressure can get to you, too. But, honestly, like, okay, I don't perform well, whatever. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, God doesn't see, oh, you didn't perform well, so I'm not going to love you as much, like,
Right.
as if you do perform well. And I think that's, like, a hard thing for me to understand sometimes. It's just, like, no matter how I feel or, like, how I perform, the Lord loves me the same.
Right. I love that. I love that a lot, actually. That totally makes me feel better too because I kind of needed that today because, I'm sitting in chemistry and I'm sitting there listening to him talking. I said, this is going right over my head. I don't
Mhm.
understand a word he's saying. But honestly, if I'm giving it all I got, who cares? Honestly, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give everything I have, but sometimes that's not enough for me in my human form. But who cares because the Lord doesn't
Yeah,
care.
exactly.
That He only cares about what we're doing for others and how we're treating others.
And it's not even just in sports too, like in the classroom too. I know last semester no, it was 2 semesters ago, sorry, last fall. And so I was doing this really big group project and it was like a big part of my grade and like we didn't do as well as I thought we were gonna do. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not gonna get the grade I wanted and like freaking out, and then like now I sit here and I look back and I'm like, that was not a big deal at all.
Right.
Like that did not define who I am like as a person, as a student, like a follower of Jesus, like nothing. I was like, that literally was just a freak out moment and like just like the pressure of like coaches with grades and like myself with grades and like, oh, what are people gonna think if like I don't get a perfect A in this class? And it just doesn't matter. And that just like blows my mind to Christ that he doesn't even like care about that as long as you're giving it your best shot.
Right. I think it is so cool because these little things that we put as our priorities or something that really mean like affects how we go through our day, those things are a literal speck in the whole universe of him dying on the cross, and we're sitting there comparing, like saying,
Yeah.
oh, my stats don't look good, or
Yeah.
I made a mistake earlier, and he's gonna hate me for it. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's somebody on the cross next to him was a criminal, and the Lord said, I want you to come to heaven with me, and he did. So why are we so worried about these little mistakes that
Yes.
don't matter in the grand scheme of things?
Exactly. And it's like, again, like not even just in sports, like in life, like I've messed up, I've done stuff that I regret, like I've been selfish on the court, off the court, like, and he still looks at me and is like, wow, I still love you, like I still died on the cross for you. And that's just like amazing thought to me.
I love that a lot. That's really good. I think I saw a verse today. It was Philippians, say it was in Philippians, and it was basically just saying, like, what you're doing is for the Lord. Like, everything you do is for the Lord. So whatever we're doing in sports, we have this platform of being able to be Division 1 athletes, and we have this huge platform to use. And nobody's looking at our stats. Everybody's looking at, how do you play on the field, or how do you play in the court, or how are you treating others? Are you being a good sportsman? Like, that's what they're looking at. And we're so worried about our stats, whether it defines us as a good player or not. But your teammates aren't going to remember, oh my goodness, I remember when you were playing, Jacksonville State, you struck out, or you messed up.
Exactly.
Nobody's thinking about that. They're thinking, oh, when you screwed up, did you throw a temper tantrum on the field, or did you get back up there and go up and, treat everybody like they deserve to be treated?
Yeah. And I like 100% like understand, because especially volleyball, like it's such a fast game and there's so much going on, like so fast that it's so easy to get caught up in the game. And okay, like that wasn't like the greatest pass by this person, or like the greatest that whatever. And like you can start pointing fingers and stuff. And like I know I get caught up in that 100%. And then I have to step out on the sideline and be like, okay, well, like what am I doing? Like what does the Lord want me to do? Like how am I reflecting Him on the court? And that's one of the verses I wrote down was Philippians 1:6, where it talks about that you're a work in progress and the Lord's going to bring that to like completion. Like I'm not the same person I was yesterday, but I'm not the same person that I'm going to be tomorrow or like the day after.
I love that. That was really good. Man, that's got me pumped up. I'm excited. I love that. That's such a cool way to think of it, because we're always thinking like, oh my goodness, like I was really trying to do this, but I didn't quite make it. But like you said, we are a work in progress. Like, you're honestly not supposed to make everything you do, because the part of that failure is part of being a success in the future. And I think that's such a cool verse to think about, because we always want to be perfect at everything we do, and when we fail, we get upset. But we are a work in progress, and He's part of fulfilling our plan for us.
Yeah. And like we often think like, oh, I want something to change like right overnight. Well, that's obviously not going to happen. It's going to take like days and days and days, years and years and years. But in like the aspect of like perspective of eternity, like your yesterday or like years and years is just a blink of an eye. Like you think that change is happening so slow in your everyday life, but when you look back, like I look back to 2-3 years ago when I was a freshman, sophomore, like I'm not even close to that person that I was, even though sometimes it may act like in certain aspects, like, okay, well, that was my bad day or whatever. But like, yeah, it's just amazing to see like how much like I've grown, how much like people around me have grown. So
yeah, I think that is so cool. I'm currently reading a book called The Well-Watered Woman, and it's basically about how, as people, we expect to just grow overnight, like you said, and just kind of, oh, we got saved, we're a new person, like we're not going to have any of these like failures that we had before. But in this book, she basically goes to say what you're going through, and what you're building on your relationship isn't an overnight thing, and it's like a plant. You have to water it, you have to feed it, and it grows and it becomes beautiful. But a plant never stops growing. The roots keep digging down deeper. And I think that's so cool, because it's true. Like, we want to be good overnight. We're just like, oh, I want to make this transformation, like I'm ready. But sometimes it's not in your plan for you to be ready instantly. Sometimes God is like, I want to test you a little. Like, how deep are your roots? Like, how firm are you going to stand when there's a storm coming in, and you're tempted by whatever Satan's got on a silver platter for you? Like, that's what He cares about. And that's what I love a lot about the book. It's really inspiring, because it sometimes when I do feel like a failure, and I'm like, my relationship with God isn't where it should be right now, That's not what God's looking for. Like, he wants you to just be firm whenever the storm comes.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of time with that too, like I know Satan like plants thoughts in your head, like, oh, like is my salvation even real? Like, am I truly representing Christ like as best as I could? Like, what how am I putting out there? Like, oh my gosh, I just embarrassed Jesus for doing this, whatever. Well, Jesus is like, well, like I know that's not you. I know your heart. Like I know everything about you. I made you. Like the and that just is like amazing. And then just like how patient God is with us, with like changing and like transformation. And I was reading in Exodus the other day, and it was talking about like Moses in the burning bush, and it was talking about how like Moses didn't start talking to the burning bush, or Jesus, sorry, God didn't start talking through to Moses through the burning bush until Moses realized the bush that was burning. Like checked it, went and checked it out. And so one of the notes in my Bible was talking about like, okay, well, like what does God have in your life that you're missing and that you haven't realized yet? And that really got me thinking about like, okay, like who is around me that like can change my life that I haven't like said like, oh hey, like how are you doing? Or like, reached out to them or whatever. And so that just like was really amazing to me, and like just thinking like how patient God is and how like impatient we are as humans. And so that was like, wow, that was just really eye opening moment for me.
Yeah. I one of the reasons I started this podcast was because of just I go through a lot of stuff, and I feel like sometimes I want somebody to that I can talk to that has gone through similar stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't ever have those people in my life at the
Yeah.
time. So I'm like, I go through so many unique situations I can't even fathom them. But I was like, I need to start a podcast for that. And I think that's one of the things that I love about this is it makes me realize things about myself that I didn't even know. Like when I get to talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I needed this a lot more than I thought I
Yeah.
did. And honestly, there's some things in my life that I'm like, you're right. Like we aren't realizing the things that he does put there for us, but we got to do a little digging. Like he's not just going to hand it to us and be like, here you go. Like,
Right.
here's what you need to learn today.
Yeah.
Like he wants us to be yearning for him and yearning to learn more about him in our relationship. And it's kind of like a bright neon sign, but for us, we're so blinded by everything else going on, we don't even see it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, come on now, like I'm giving this to you,
Yeah.
and you're just not even seeing it. And
Mhm.
it's because we're so like distracted by everything going on, such as our sports and schoolwork and stuff. And he's just like, take a second, slow down, stop,
Yeah.
and look at what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's so many people in our lives that he puts there for us to help us and for us to help them, and we're missing it every day because we're not aware of what he's trying to do for us.
Yeah. 100%. And I think too, like, you know, God, like I lead Bible study with one of my best friends, and we just have a really good community, and that's something we wanted to focus on this year is just building community, and like not just like, okay, well, we're gonna stay here for an hour and like just talk at you, like, and you're gonna listen. Like, no, we want to like we're doing like activities, like tonight we're having a painting night, and like we're just gonna like be there together and just have like conversation, like build that relationship, and like centered around Christ, which is like the absolutely like greatest and coolest thing ever, because like no one's expecting you to be perfect in your relationship, and that it's just like, okay, yeah, we can relate on all these aspects, and like Jesus is like the center of that, and that is just like so amazing and so like unique, and like just builds a strong bond.
Yeah, I love that a lot. I One of the things that I love so much about, the Bible says so many times like community is so important. Like you would be surprised honestly how many times it says there in the
Mhm.
Bible, but I think that's something we forget. Like we go through whatever we're going through alone, and that's not what he intends. He puts so many blessings and so many people in our life for us to use and for us
Mhm.
to be like, hey, I need help, can you help me out? And I mean that's part of community, and I love that you have that with your buddies and stuff, that you have those people that if you're going through something unique that you just don't know what to do, like
Yep.
you have that community that God has given you.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes like with that, like we think not that we shouldn't go to God for everything, because we could, but like also like he's like, look, like if you want like someone to speak like directly, like what you want to hear, like I speak through people, and that's like one of the coolest things, especially like one of my best friends, Trinity Miller. Like there's just so many times I hear like God's voice through her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I needed to hear today, or like yeah, it's just amazing, like to think that like I'm like, God, just speak to me. Like, let me hear your voice. And like, I want to like hear some voice in my head. Like, it's so
Yes.
crazy like that. But it's like, he speaks to me in other ways, like through the Bible is like the best way. And I'm like, wow, how did he know I was going to read this today? And like
Yeah.
that I needed this the exact moment that I'm reading it. But just like things like that are so amazing.
Yeah, I love that. I honestly had never thought of that, like that he speaks through people, but I love that a lot because like honestly, I struggle with just reading it and just putting it into my life. But
Mhm.
when somebody can explain it to me in a different way that it's not in the Bible, I'm just like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what I've been needing. But it's coming
Yeah.
from the Bible. Like when Pastor Daniel from Better Life, when he says something, I'm like, why have I never thought of it that way before? But it's because
Yeah.
he is speaking through people and he knows that I struggle with just sitting
Mhm.
down and just reading straight from the Bible. And he's
Yeah.
like, here you go. Like, here's somebody that can help you understand
Yeah.
it a little better than you were understanding it before.
Yeah. Pastor Daniel was really good at that, making like just not I won't say like dumbing it down, but like, sometimes we think like, oh, the Bible's complicated. Well, it's not always complicated to read, but it's complicated to apply to our lives. And
Right.
he gives you like steps of application. And I know that has helped me like tremendously, just like
Yes.
listen to him. He's like, okay, well, like if you want like this to change in your life, here are the steps that you need to do to like get that in your life. And that just like makes it easier on me and like just like processing God's work and not just being like, okay, I'm just gonna read through it, just say I like read it and like check it off my list, but to like dive deep and like, okay, well, like put myself in the story. How would I feel in that situation? I know, like with like again, I said I'm reading Exodus and like Moses is like going to Pharaoh and like saying like let my people go and stuff. And like, would I be able to like go to like Pharaoh and be like,
Right.
hey, God told me to tell you that you should let his people go, or else he's gonna bring some harsh punishments on you. But yeah, no, like that's just like so crazy and that like people like had that much faith in God to like just go and like do as he said and like not know what was gonna happen.
Right. I think that is so cool because so many times we have to take like a leap of faith, like especially in sports. And I know I'm applying this a lot, but it's easy for us to understand.
Yeah.
But especially in sports, there's always something new that they're like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And you're just like, "I
Mhm.
don't know. I feel comfortable doing what I'm doing
Yep.
right now." But we have to take that leap of faith because I mean, so many people in the Bible did it. It's not even funny, but
Mhm.
they do this and they take a leap of faith and sometimes it doesn't work but that's all right because it's part of the plan, but then they keep trying. Like he kept going to Pharaoh and he's like,
Mhm.
let him go, come on now. And God was working with Moses and was like, hey, I'll help you, but you've got to do the hard part. You've
Yeah.
got to go to him and confront one of the most powerful men in the world at the time.
Yeah.
And he took that leap of faith and every time God provided, every single time, even though to him he was like, come on now, like just let him go. Like
Yeah.
seriously, what's going on?
Yeah.
But he just kept taking that leap of faith, and that is such an important thing because as Christians we've kind of gone dormant and we're just like,
Mhm.
okay, like I'll put a verse in my bio and I'll just
Yeah.
expect people to know that I'm a Christian,
Exactly.
but I'm not gonna really go out because I don't want people to hang out
Mhm.
with me just because I'm Christian. But
Yeah.
it's like, come on, like you have so many people that you could one be showing the amazing word that we have in front of us, and but we're so scared of just people how they're going to look at us and how people are going
Mhm.
to talk about us, but who cares?
Yeah.
Moses literally could have died going to him and all we have is a little bit of people talking behind our back, like
Yeah.
there are worse things that could
Yeah.
happen, honestly.
Exactly.
And I just think that's
Yeah.
so cool, like just a leap of faith is all you need.
Yeah, and I think it's going off like faith and stuff, Hebrews 11, I think it is, talks about like it's like known as like the Hall of Faith or whatever, and it talks about like there's one verse or so that's like we're not even like worthy enough to know some of the names of like people that had faith in God and like what they did, and it's like that like really just spoke to me. I was like, wow, I don't even deserve to know their name because of the things they did for God, and like that just like blows my mind. Like we think of all these people like, oh yeah, well it's probably easy like to have Jesus right there in front of you, being like, okay, like follow me, like
Yeah.
okay, yeah, like
Yeah.
but they didn't know who Jesus was. Like
Right.
he hasn't done anything yet to prove to them like, oh, this is what I can do. Like if Jesus were to come to me right now, like, would I follow him? Like,
Right.
if I didn't know any of this stuff in the Bible, like, would I just be like, okay, like some random guy comes up to me, like, am I gonna follow him, or am I
Right.
just gonna be like, oh, okay, right here, like, I have my life right here.
Right. Well, what's crazy to think about is like back then when they would say like Jesus is the savior, like he came, he resurrected, and he's the son of God, they would stone them to death.
Hmm.
We don't get that here,
Yep.
so why are we so afraid to go out and be like, "Hey guys, I want to scream this from the
Right.
rooftops"? Like the Lord is how you're going to get to heaven,
Yeah.
but we're scared of that because we're just scared of we just gotten in our heads that like what we're going through right now is worse than what they went through,
Yeah.
but that's not at all the same
Yes.
because they would literally die and
Right.
we just have people talking about us like
Yeah.
who cares?
And I think one of the coolest things I remember from Athletes in Action like a couple years ago, they were talking about like they ask you a question and you have to answer in a percentage, like how sure are you that you're going to heaven? And people are like, oh, like 60, 70, 80, or like some people are like, I don't know, like 10 maybe, but like the answer, like there's no like right answer. Like it's either you're going or you're not going. You're either 100% going or you're not going at all. Like, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, or have you not? Like that's the determining factor. Like, do you believe or do you not believe? And like that was just like a really eye opening moment because I was one of those people that was like, I don't know, like 80, like some days some days I'm like, oh, I have no idea. But like you're either going or you're not, and like that is like a scary thought. It is, but like I know I'm confident that I'm going to heaven and that I'm going to meet Jesus someday.
Yeah, I love that a lot. I think one of the things that I struggle with personally is just kind of struggling with, like, I know my relationship is not where I want it to be, so I'm afraid to be able to talk to other people and be like, I know my relationship isn't great, but like you need a relationship with God. Like I have never known how to confront that, but realizing now is like nobody needs you to be perfect and have this perfect relationship. And honestly, showing them that you do make mistakes, it's honestly better because they're like, okay, I feel a little better. And I think that is now that I'm learning with this is I'm like, obviously my teammates know I'm not perfect, but they know that I'm working towards a relationship with God, and I think that helps not only them but even the people that listen to the podcast. Like, I know I'm not perfect, but I am working towards a relationship, and that's all he wants.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want you to stop searching and yearning for him. That's all he asks.
Yeah, and he doesn't ask for perfection. It's like one of the coolest things ever because I'm like such a perfectionist at heart, and I'm like, oh my gosh, everything I have to do has to be perfect, perfect, perfect. And it's not like, oh, my whole world is like coming down and crumbling, but like he like does not expect perfection by any means, and like he knows that we're gonna make mistakes, but he died for those mistakes,
right?
And that is like one of the coolest things. But it just blows my mind every time. So.
Yeah, I just love this. This was like the best conversation ever. This was so just breathtaking, I guess. I'm at a loss for words at this point, but I am so glad you were able to come here, and I'm so glad we got to meet.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all knew this, but this is our first time meeting, and it's pretty great. But I'm so glad that you came on here, and I am just excited to keep seeing you through the dorm and come watch your games and stuff. And thank you everybody so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned and go be the reason somebody smiles today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Y'all have a good one.